It was an event that defined a generation, and now a new History Channel documentary tells the story of the Vietnam War like it's never been told before.
All of a sudden, mortars and rocket fires start coming down on us. 105s are screaming overhead, and men are shouting and firing. Smoke starts clogging my lungs, and the sounds of small arms and machine guns fire rips through the air.
Joining me in studio is Michael Emerson, field producer of Vietnam in HD. Michael, it's so great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
What was so unique about Vietnam was it really was kind of the first war to be televised.
Yes.
What do you think viewers will find new in this?
What I have found, I served in the military during that time, but I did not serve in Vietnam. I want that's very clear, but I was around a lot of people who did. And what happened is the knowledge that America has about Vietnam comes from two primary sources, either the news media or Hollywood, and neither are accurate. And what we pride ourselves on in Vietnam in HD is this is a story about a war told by the people who fought it. In their eyes, their minds, their hearts, they were there, and actually in their blood as well. And that's never been done before. This isn't what a writer says. This isn't what a newsman thinks it should be. This is what happens to the minds, hearts, and souls of people who are on the ground and in the air who fought those battles.
So Michael, you spent a lot of time tracking down some of this incredible footage, and I actually want to play for our viewers one of these clips from Joe Galloway. Let's take a look.
I looked up, and there are two jets coming directly at us. The lead plane has already turned loose canisters of napalm. But unfortunately for 2 or 3 guys, they were right in the path. And in that flame, I could see these 2 men dancing and screaming.
I was watching that clip, and he goes on to talk about how this was his nightmare. I mean, how emotional are these stories?
Joe Galloway is a man's man. This guy was a UPI embedded reporter in Vietnam. He's the only reporter in that war to win a Silver Star, and he won that Silver Star by risking his life, crawling out into a battlefield, pulling soldiers out of the line of fire. Doesn't take a whole lot from anybody. He speaks his own mind. He's a terrific interview and addition to this series, and his voice is the younger part of Joe Galloway's voiced by Ed Burns. One of the aspects of the program that has made the series and made it so successful is we send crews to interview all of these people, and we hear their words, their stories, their recollections of what took place, how it took place, why it took place. And then we tell their story from their point of view, both today in memory, and then we transition into a younger voice. In this case, it was Ed Burns who did Joe, telling the story in present tense. But it's always their story, and that's very, very important.
Now, we saw a little bit of the footage in his clip, but I mean, you have some amazing footage just of air battles and them firing artillery into some of these LZ zones. I mean, talk a little bit about how that process went of getting that footage.
Thank you for asking. It gives me a plug to our producer. The senior producer on this was Liz Rev. She did an incredible job, also one of the head writers for the series. But how it took place, the series was really basically a year and a half, almost 2 years in the making. First 8 to 10 months was we searched out footage from all the archives in Washington, all the military archives, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force. And then we put out ads in military organizations, magazines, newspapers for anybody who had their home footage. And we got hundreds and hundreds of hours of people sending us their 8mm home footage that they shot on these battlefields, in these encampments. What we then did for them is everybody who sent it to us, we digitized it, put it into HD, put it onto disk, and return it to them so that they won't deteriorate. But that's what adds to the realism of the footage, and most of this footage people just haven't seen.
That's incredible. And I mean, when you look at some of this footage of what's going on in some of the battles, I mean, how do you think this would change people's perceptions of how that war actually was fought?
Well, that is a terrific question, and I'm not sure. The generation after Vietnam, the soldiers were treated very poorly. These men and women who had sacrificed their lives to help others come back and were, ostracized from American society by a media-driven frenzy, basically. And I think what happens is, I can tell you in dealing with some of these individuals that we've dealt with on this program and the celebrities who have done it with them, I think it finally validates not only what they did, but why they did it, and the pureness of their heart in what they did. So I'm hoping that it does relieve their families and some of the soldiers who will have a chance to watch this and realize, you know what, you did a terrific job, and the whole nation owes you for it.
Now talk a little bit, because you do have a lot of big-name celebrities that were part of this project. I mean, what were some of the stories that came out from their involvement? I mean,
well, I'll tell you an example. What I found in doing this is again the third series, and I'm amazed at how many large-name celebrities are welcoming the opportunity to be part of this. In this particular case, I'll give you one example. Blair Underwood plays a sergeant, Sergeant Brown. Sergeant Brown is a career sergeant, and he's in another battle, Hill 837. By the way, the designate of the hills in Vietnam was how tall they were in meters. That's how they named the hills. And when Blair came forward and did this role, and he did an incredible job. He's such a talented guy. I got the chance to talk to him for a while, and it turns out his father was a lieutenant colonel that served in Vietnam. And Dylan Mcdermott plays one of our people in this. And what's interesting is when I researched him before I went to ask him to do the show, I found that he had done a movie called Hamburger Hill in 1985. He was one of the stars of it. And when I met Dylan, he told me, he goes, before I even brought it up, he goes, I did a film in 1985. I knew nothing about Vietnam, and I knew nothing about Hamburger Hill. He says, I learned so much doing that film, which was now, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. He said, I did so much about that film that when you asked me to do this, I had to, out of respect for those who served. And that's what I found through this whole thing. Everybody had either their uncle, a father, a grandfather, somebody that they were doing out of respect for them and paying homage to them.
So you think that through doing this documentary that you're finding maybe the attitudes have changed a little bit towards those who actually served in Vietnam?
I think so, but I think the nation's attitude has changed. I remember seeing an ad for American Airlines. In fact, a friend of mine did it. And it's where, they're a woman, soldier, coming back, waiting to get on a plane. American Airlines lets them come on first because they're a soldier. And a gentleman stands up who looks like a Vietnam veteran age, or maybe World War II age. It's an older gentleman. And he gives a salute to her as she goes by. I think this whole attitude that people are beginning to realize that our freedoms, our liberties, our protection, our defense don't come from lawyers, they don't come from politicians, they come from soldiers. And I think they finally are getting that respect.
And you can check out the History Channel documentary, Vietnam in HD, airing November 8th through 10th. Visit history.com to check your local listings. For PJTV, I'm Alexis Garcia.